Usually when you're taking a Venn diagram and looking at data on it, it's because you took something like a survey or you're taking some type of raw data and trying to organize it. So let's just take a minute and see what that process looks like. And the question on the screen, it says a survey of 100 students was taken and they were asked their favorite genres. Responses were distributed in the following way. 58 people liked comedies, 42 liked romance, 47 liked horror, 16 liked all three, 21 liked comedy and romance, 29 liked romance and horror, and 19 liked comedy and horror. And the first thing you might notice if you're a careful reader is these numbers go way over 100. The reason being, 58 people liked comedies. Well, in those 58 people, 21 of them liked comedies and romance. And 19 of them also liked horror. And 16 of them liked all three. So we have to be able to create our Venn diagram in a careful way. So step one is we have three categories: comedy, romance, and horror. So the easiest step to take is just to start with a 3-circle Venn diagram. And I will should do that last circle a little nicer. The last circle always goes a little wide. And we will put comedies here, romance here, and horror as the bottom one. And so what we have to be careful about is double counting. We have to make sure we don't do any of it. So in order to keep from double counting, all you have to do is start with the heaviest weighted category. So which category includes the most of our sets? We have 3 sets, and we have a category that includes all 3. So we'll start with that one. If all 3 like 16, then take a minute and try to figure out where you would put that number in our Venn diagram. The spot that includes all 3 of our circles is right here. We have only one spot that includes all 3 of our circles, so we put our 16 there. Then we move to our less heavy-weighted problems, so we wouldn't go to here because just horror is not as heavily weighted as comedy and horror. So we'll work on these 3 next. And I'll start with comedy and romance. 21 people liked comedy and romance. So that tells us that 21 people liked both of these. But 16 of the people who liked both of them are already accounted for with this 16. Because these 16 liked comedy and romance, but they also liked horror. So we're not going to put the 21 in there. In fact, we are going to have to take 16 from 21 first. So we have 21 people who like comedy and romance, but 16 of them like all 3, so we'll have to take that away. 21 minus 16 is 5, so we're going to get a little 5 right here. Now we move on to the next piece. Do this in a different color. Romance and horror. 29 people like romance and horror. That's going to be this spot right here. And so a 29 would go there, but once again, 16 of them are already accounted for. 16 of the people who like romance and horror also like comedies. So we have to do our 29 minus 16 this time, and what we're left with is 13. So we get a 13 in this spot. Then we have comedy and horror. Comedy and horror is our last little mixed piece right here. Do this one in yellow. Comedy and horror is our last mixed piece right here. And once again, we have 19, but 16 of the 19 are already accounted for, so we're going to have to do 19 minus 16, which leaves us with just 3 in that spot. And now with these last ones, we do the same type of thing. Switch my color again. We will start with comedies. We're in our last 3. They're all weighted the same, so it doesn't matter which we start with. We'll start with comedies. We have 58 people who like comedies, but 3 of them also like horror movies, 16 of them like all 3, and 5 of them also like romance movies. So we're going to have to take our 58 and subtract off 3, subtract off 16, and subtract off 5. And when we do so, we get 58 minus 3 is 55. 55 minus 16 is 39. 39 minus 5 is 34. So in the comedy spot, I'm going to be left with 34 total. Romance, we have 42, but 5, 16, and I'll change my color again to red. 5, 16, and 13 people all like romance already. So we're going to have to do our subtraction again. We're going to have to do 42 minus 5 minus 16 minus 13. And this time we are left with, well, 42 minus 5 is 37. 37 minus 16, that's an easy one, is 21. 21 minus 13 is going to be 8. 8. So out of the 42, we're actually only going to put an 8 here in the romance category. Only 8 people chose just romance, which really points out why you have to be careful with these. So now we'll do horror. Horror is our last one. In the horror category, we have 47, but this time we have 3, 16, and 13 all accounted for. So we're going to have to do our 47 minus 3 minus 16 minus 13, which leaves me with 47 minus 3 is 44, minus 16 is 30, 28. 28 minus 13 is 15. We're left with a 15 down here. And then all we have to do at the end is check our answer. So we have all these people who responded to a survey. So our total number of people should only be 100 students. It would only make sense that we have 100 students in our Venn diagram. So let's make sure that's true. We have 34 plus 3 plus 5 plus 16 plus 8 plus 13 plus 15. And so over here on the left, we have 37 plus 5 is 42, which gives me 58. And on the right side, we have 10, 20, 31, 36. So what we're left with in the end is 80, 94. So we have less than 100, which is fine, because in the end, we might, on the outside, have some people. We might have some people left on the outside. So we might have some people who didn't answer, who didn't like any of these categories. So in this case, we're actually left with 6 people who didn't like the categories. That's our little outside of the Venn diagram set. And so that is building a Venn diagram from a question. You might be given questions about a Venn diagram. For example, in this case, we have set A and set B. And you might be asked, how many people belong to set A? How many people are there in set A? And your immediate response might be something like 600. You might see the 600 and just say 600. But that doesn't include everyone who's in this set. Everyone who's in this set would actually be 1,000. Just like how B would actually be 1060. And you might be asked how many people belong to set A or B. The number of people who belong to set A or B are all 3 of these numbers added together, or 1,660. Or you might be asked who belongs to set A and B. And in that case, you're only going to have this number, which is the 400. So the survey distribution questions are just a real-world application of these Venn diagrams and this set theory.